Mm-hmm.
Could you count to 10, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay, could you tell us your name
Dave Sallinger.
and your occupation?
I'm the entertainment editor for the McKEESPORT Daily News.
And how long have you been a music fan?
Well, as long as I can remember, as long as the radio was playing when I was growing up, whatever my parents were listening to, what the neighbors were listening to.
And who were the main DJs when you were growing up?
Well, my farthest back memory is in the late 50s, and that would be Clark Race in his earliest days, J. Michael, Barry Kay, Hillary Bogdan, and Porky.
Okay. Who would you think would be the most influential of all those, as far as the sounds of today go?
Well, undoubtedly, in that respect, it's Porky because he was the person who helped popularize the type of music which became rock and roll ultimately. So if then that is the type of music of today, he's the natural, he's the guy who was there.
How would you characterize that sound?
Well, it's music with a beat, and he said even that he put the beat to rock and roll, which is in large part true. It has a lot of sax, a lot of fun is probably one of the major ingredients.
Somebody who said that there's a very raw sound to Porky. What are your thoughts on that?
Some of the rawness of the music is linked to probably the production values of the time. The studios weren't all that great. Some of the songs aren't really all that great either, but that's what makes them fun or makes them collectible. Some of the vocals are off pitch, some of them are right on pitch. It all depends on record to record which ones you're listening to. But the rawness is the emotional value of it. The guys who were doing the records at the time wanted to do those records. They went in there often just one shot and went home. They weren't manufactured. They just went in and made music.
I see. Could you tell us a little bit about Porky himself and his background history?
Well, Porky grew up in Homestead. His earliest, probably public appearance was in sports rather than music. He worked with a lot of local teams. He coached and sponsored local teams, and he did some of the broadcast work down at West Field, which I think is in Munhall. When WHOD went on the air in 1948, in that big rush of radio stations that went on the air right after the war, he figured that was his possible inroad into radio. But he wasn't a DJ or anything of that nature. He just sort of went down and hung out there. And little by little, he started learning how to work the board, do the mechanical jobs, and he would do some sports casting. And because it was a daylight-only station, as summer approached, the hours got longer, the station was on the air longer, and they needed somebody to fill up the later hours of the day. They said, "Porky, it's yours." So he went home and got out his dusty discs and brought them down and started playing them. They weren't necessarily well received across the board. The kids liked it, the parents didn't like it, which probably has never changed. It's, no matter what style of music, it's always a new hurdle to overcome. And he had a pretty big one at the time.
I understand there were a lot of black artists that he concentrated on. Do you think that could have been...
In large part, I would say that's true. He was a white guy playing black music. At that time, it was still called race music, which gives you an idea of the time period. R&B, before rock and roll. And it was music that a white audience didn't necessarily understand particularly, or didn't want its sons and daughters listening to. Those parents were proved ultimately wrong about it because music's music. It's danceable, it's a good time. And Porky was there and had to take the brickbats as a lot of complaints, and the station people stood behind him. They knew they were getting some reaction, and they had a person on the air who was causing some controversy unintentionally, but it passed, and then he was there for years and years and years. It became Whammo, the station changed over, and he stayed with it and continued to play his music for the next 30, 40 years.
Okay, let me change the focal length here. Turn this off for a second. Now, what about the Porky later years?
Well, after the initial run on WHOD, Whammo, he moved around to a number of different stations, which included WMCK, I believe, WEDO. He was at WRUA in Monroeville, I think. And in the last couple of years, he is part of a network. It's the Porky Network, basically. It's a show called Porky Town. It's on 5 different stations on the weekends, some AM, some FM, in Pittsburgh and in surrounding towns. And that particular show is a combination of his type of music and some of the others that he didn't play as much, but were all part of the rock and roll era. So he's managed to stay contemporary as far as that goes, and is introducing a whole new generation to some of his sounds, those programs are on some reasonably large stations like WEEP, whereas some of his other programs like WRUA were on a smaller station, less heard. So right now he's getting good distribution of his sounds, so it's having an effect.
Who do you think is his main audience?
Nowadays, I would think it's the people who grew up with him. The younger people have their own sound, is always the case. People who are in their 30s and their 40s who always liked the early rock and roll, or those people who came to it in the late 60s, in the revival period in the 70s, catching it on the rebound, are still sticking with it. It's still listenable music, it's still fun, and the music of other styles don't necessarily give the people the same thing the oldies do. People want to dance, people want to remember. It's memory music in large, and it's also collectible. People who live with records, those are the kinds of records they collect. So they tune in Porky to see what they need next.
What about Porky as a DJ himself? What makes him unique?
Well, in addition to the type of music he was playing, he had a rap which went with it. He had the taglines, Pork the Torque, Daddy-O the Radio, I'm not John Wayne, I'm Porky the Insane, my name's not Sergeant York, it's Pork the Torque, a variety of things like that. And he called things platters instead of records and dusty discs, and he had alternate terminology, and it was different. The people on the other stations were straighter, more straightforward delivery of the facts and figures, and Porky was having a party, making up words and enjoying himself.
Okay. Excuse me for 1 second. I believe we were talking about Porky and the just the mood of the 50s and the record hop.
Porky would have record hops. He had hundreds of them in a row. I think he set a record for the most number of nights that he was out spinning records. He would do them in places like drive-in theaters, roller rinks, and in those days the DJs would take acts with them to the various hops they were doing. And around here, all the local groups like the Skyliners and Tempos and the Four Coins and Del Vikings, everybody would want to be on all the DJ shows, and Porky was an open door. He'd come with me, come to mine too. He would put them on the air, singing live sometimes. In those days, you could take your records right into a DJ. There was no program director to go through. DJ would say, sure, I'll play it. And because the DJs wanted to be the first, they wanted to break the record. They wanted to say that this was my discovery. And Porky made a lot of those. And he helped a lot of artists, not only from Pittsburgh, but nationally, who weren't getting airplay in other places, especially on the bigger and the white radio stations. The black artists like Bo Diddley, for example, always points out every time he comes to Pittsburgh that Porky was one of the guys who made him what he is. If Bo Diddley comes to rock and roll revival programs or just any concert anywhere, he either asks if Porky's there or just out of the blue cites him as, you know, one of his early supporters.
Okay, and Porky as the man versus the persona, his personality on air.
He's much the same on the air and off the air. He talks the same. It's not a put on. It's not a mask. He probably uses less of the Porky-isms in real life because you don't need them to help introduce the records, but it's still the same voice. It's not manufactured. It's a friendly guy, open, talks to you just like he's known you forever, and probably has in case of many of us in the middle age range. He's just a nice guy.
Some of the Porky-isms, could we go over those one more time?
He made up the daddy-o of the radio, the platter push and papa. He invented words like, or phrases like dusty discs, and he would make up rhyming phrases like, I'm not Sergeant York, I'm Pork the Torque. I'm not John Wayne, I'm Porky the Insane. And just to break up the records, to make it interesting, to catch your ear, to be different than everybody else. And it worked.
I think that's everything. Maybe we better just one more time go over the different radio stations he's been on.
He began in 1948 at WHOD when it first signed on the air. That station at that time was kind of unusual in that it was founded by ethnic programmers from WMCK. And so it was a lot of nationality shows, the Italian hour, the Polish hour, the Lithuanian hour, Hungarian hour, whatever it was, plus country music, plus Mary D., who was the first black DJ in this area. And Porky then, once he got established there, WHOD changed call letters to WAMO. And after that, he moved to different stations in the area like WEDO, WMCK, WRUA, and now he's on 5 stations in the Porky Town program. It's a small network. In Pittsburgh, it's WEEP, and he goes as far afield as Waynesburg and other stations around the region.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Just put the light out of your eyes.
I hope I don't look as bad as I think I do.